There we go. And I'm live. Hello everyone who might be watching this back, and
It's not the heat that
that
gets you.
hoping that
Well, it
the
might.
internet
If
doesn't
the miles and
work out
miles
again.
of endless barren desert without water don't first.
We're trying again to do the Discovery Tour. Okay, what's this one?
Welcome to The Origin of the Pyramid.
I've actually saved my progress.
The origin of the word pyramid is controversial. Most believe that it originates with the Greek word
Hi, Bill.
pyramis, which referred to a bread of conical shape. Life and death in ancient Egypt were modeled on the cycle of the sun. The perfect shape of the smooth-faced pyramid became associated with the metaphor of the pharaoh transformed into one of the sun's rays in death. Pyramids represented the Benben, the primordial mound of the Heliopolitan creation myth. These stories permeated every aspect of Egyptian life to a greater or lesser extent.
I'm gonna do all the ones I did yesterday, so we get the complete tour.
During the
Thank you for the host,
pre-dynastic
Michael.
period, the development of funerary practices was different, depending on whether one was located in Lower Egypt or Upper Egypt. Well before the pyramid, there was the burial pits. It is on the site of Merimde Beni Salome in Lower Egypt that we find the oldest funerary site, dating back to 5000 BCE. Study of the tombs revealed that the bodies of the deceased were deposited in a shallow grave, in a fetal position. Though a few objects were recovered from these graves, they offered no insight as to the social class of those interred within. In Upper Egypt, pre-dynastic practices are easier to study, but reveal more complex funerary rites. They are divided into two cultural phases, Badarian and Nagada. The Badarian phase ranged from 4400 BCE to 3800 BCE. Small necropolises were discovered on the outskirts of villages, revealing the emergence of a funerary cult. The bodies of the deceased were lowered into an oval grave and covered with goat or gazelle skins. Items needed in everyday life were added alongside the body.
They took care of the dead. Unlike what we do, we just bury them.
During the three Nagada periods ranging from 4000 BCE to 3510 BCE, funerary practices evolved in complexity. The shape of tombs changed from oval to rectangular, mimicking the homes of the living. The size of the burials increased and funerary items became more stylized and numerous. Tombs gained complexity with masonry, wooden veneers, or raw bricks added to strengthen the structures. In time, socially stratified necropolises emerged. For example, in Hierakonpolis, the elite and commoners had separate necropolises.
Sorry, I'm just gonna look something up. This is where the
The
internet
term mastaba,
forked up
meaning
yesterday.
massive bench in dialectal Arabic, refers to a form of funerary architecture that was present in Egypt from the Archaic period to the Middle Kingdom.
Thank you for the
An
host,
evolution of the burial pit,
Strathaven
mastabas were generally
Graham.
composed of two parts.
Or Carl.
A structure was built above the ground in the form of a massive rectangle with stepped walls, and a subterranean burial chamber was located underneath. Smaller mastabas often surrounded the much larger tomb of the king. These generally held the remains of the king's relatives and courtiers.
That's cool.
The arrangement of the substructure of the mastaba evolved during the course of the Old Kingdom. From the 5th dynasty onwards, mastabas often featured multi-roomed substructures, with sometimes up to 30 rooms. Also, the quantity and quality of decorated surfaces increased noticeably, as well as the number of statues found within.
It would be cool if they made like a 3D model of this so you can twist it a bit and like look around stuff. Like have more interactive experience.
The 6th dynasty would see art used to its utmost. The entire surface of a mastaba would be covered in scenes of daily life, illustrating the prosperity of those lucky enough to comfortably spend eternity near the pyramid of a pharaoh. The best example of this type of mastaba is the tomb of Meroruka in Saqqara.
Yay! Cleared. Should do that so we can go like that. You can do all of these tours on mounts as well. You don't need to do it on foot. You don't need to be on foot in order to activate the points. Information points, I guess you can call it.
Welcome to Menkaura's funerary complex.
Oh, maybe you do need to be on foot for this one.
The dimensions of Menkaura's pyramid are much less grandiose. However, unlike its predecessors, Menkaura's pyramid shows a great deal of complexity in its internal and external finish. The outside was partially covered in red granite, while the internal walls were richly decorated. This latter innovation would not catch on until the end of the 5th dynasty, when pyramid texts began to adorn the walls. Menkaura's pyramid contains two sloping passages, both located in the northern side of the structure. The upper one was abandoned during the construction phase, whereas the lower one, slightly above the base of the monument, constitutes the real entrance. The lower passage leads to a first room, which, for the first time since the reign of Djoser, is decorated with engraved false doors.
Huh.
While Menkaura's pyramid complex was unfinished at the time of his death, it was hastily and somewhat shabbily completed by his successor, Shepseskaf. Even so, this funerary structure marks a watershed in the history of this kind of monument. From then onwards, the pyramid shrank, whereas the mortuary temple expanded both in its quantitative and qualitative aspects. Of particular note, it is within Menkaura's mortuary temple that one can find the heaviest block of limestone ever used for a pyramid complex, weighing in at over
Damn.
200 tons. Menkaura's causeway was completed in mud brick by the king's successor, whereas the lower part was nothing more than a simple ramp. As for the Valley Temple, it was built in two phases. The foundations were first laid out in limestone during Menkaura's reign, but the temple itself was completed in mud brick afterwards. As such, the Valley Temple was soon damaged and ended up being completely rebuilt during the 6th dynasty.
Oh right, we're at the lower pyramid, aren't we? Yeah.
Three small structures, referred to as Menkaura's Queen's Pyramids, were erected along the southern side of the main pyramid. One of them was a smooth-faced pyramid, while the other two were more basic step pyramids. It is difficult to assess whether the latter were designed as such or were left unfinished with no casing to smooth out their surfaces. The easternmost pyramid was built with the traditional rooms and corridors found within a satellite pyramid meant to house the king's Ka. However, a granite sarcophagus was found within, leading to the conclusion that it was used as an actual tomb rather than as a symbolic cenotaph. Drawing on these observations, some assumed that this pyramid was first built as a satellite pyramid for the king's Ka, before seeing its purpose change to that of a queen's tomb. Which queen, however, remains a mystery.
Cool. Let's go to Cafre. That was more French than I wanted it to be. Cafre.
Try using your eagle when you want a top-down view.
Yeah, I know. It's not my first time playing this, stupid.
Whoa. Welcome to Khafre's funerary complex. Since the very beginning of the 4th dynasty, mortuary temples were built adjacent to pyramids on the eastern side. Such a location, facing the rising sun, as well as the world of the living as a whole, held an important symbolic meaning, for it was within the mortuary temple that kings were revived through daily rituals.
So where is this?
In its standard form, a mortuary temple was divided into 2 parts. A front area which consisted of a vestibule and a courtyard, and an area in the back, where all sacred elements were located. The back of the temple incorporated several essential features, including an inner sanctuary with a false door, which allowed the soul of the pharaoh to travel between the world of the dead and the world of the living.
Ah. I'm guessing in the Old Kingdom these pillars and walls were smooth rather than, well, jagged. Or maybe covered in symbols.
The largest of all such structures, Khafre's mortuary temple, was entirely built with megalithic blocks of limestone from a nearby quarry and encased with granite. Parts of Khafre's mortuary temple, particularly the courtyard walls, are thought to have been decorated with splendid reliefs. However, not a single image of the king has been discovered inside the mortuary temple.
Yeah, it sorted itself out. It sorted itself out after 3 hours. Now, Fire, tell me your story.
Khufu's direct successor, Jedefre, followed the custom which required each king to establish a new site for their funerary accommodation, and chose Abu Rawash as his last resting place. When the time came to build his own funerary complex, Khafre, also one of Khufu's sons and the successor to Jedefre, broke with tradition and returned to Giza. Not only did Khafre thumb his nose at tradition, but he did so in a way which he hoped would allow him to overshadow his father's most important monument.
Huh. Bit of a douche then. Yeah, it's a free mode for anyone who owns the game, Colby. And more, it doesn't give depth to the game, it just educate everyone about. It's a way of the developers taking what they have learned through their research and giving it back in an educational form. You can buy just this mode for like £20 on PC. So this can be used in schools, for instance. It's a way of making students learn about ancient Egypt, for example. Top of the morning to you, Brendan.
Though Khafre's pyramid is smaller than Khufu's, it was cunningly built on a more elevated bedrock layer than the Great Pyramid, making it appear higher than any other pyramid at Giza. Today, Khafre's pyramid is the only one among the three at Giza that still has the upper part of its limestone casing.
Yeah, I know that, or remember that, or whatever.
Considered a most sacred area, the Giza necropolis was strictly defined, both geographically and physically. An 8-meter thick Tura limestone wall completely surrounded the Great Pyramid. The only way inside would have been through the mortuary temple. From the reign of Sneferu and onwards, the subsidiary pyramid became a common feature within the pyramidal complex. The function of the subsidiary pyramid, however, smaller in size and in height than the royal tomb, remains unclear, though some believe that it was meant to house the ka of the pharaoh.
Yeah, only... Oh, was it Khafre? Has one, while the smaller guy has 3.
In mainstream media, the ka is often defined as the soul of the deceased.
Mainstream.
The truth is a bit more complicated. Within the ancient Egyptian funerary belief system, the ka was a component of a living person, which separated itself from the body at the time of death. It represented the deceased's vital essence. In order for the deceased to ascend to a new life, whether in this world or the next, the ka had to be embodied in a statue, and its existence maintained through offerings and rituals.
I can see why people have made the connection between a car and the soul, because it's easier for us to understand it then, but Jesus. Yeah. So this is a part of the Book of the Dead then? Which is not a book in our sense, it's just a scroll.
Within Khafre's subsidiary pyramid, a wooden box containing pieces of cedar was discovered by archaeologists. When reassembled, it turned out to be a shrine mounted on a sled. Just as with the solar barges found around Khufu's pyramid, it seems Khafre's shrine and sled were ritually disposed of after his funeral.
Huh. That's cool. Now, there are no... Yeah, there are no... Wait, where is that? Yeah, here. It's a shame that there are no tours around this place, seeing as this is an archaeological site in the game. Okay, that's a pack of hyenas. That's very interesting, Brendan. 22 stations. 22 stations.
Welcome to
Damn.
the Riddles of the Sphinx.
Are you sure it was requested, Colby? Because
A sphinx
cabbies don't do
was
that.
originally meant to be a personification of the king. The human head, wearing pharaonic regalia, was fused with the body of a lion, thus sharing the qualities the powerful animal possessed, namely its power, the swiftness of its attack, and its majestic authority. By these very virtues, it was also considered a symbol of protection.
Hi, Hatter.
Unsurprisingly, statues of sphinxes could be found along the Dromas, protectors of the path taken by the gods to reach the temples.
That seems just weird, Colby. Cabbies don't do that. They don't have exclusivity rights to one specific person. They take fares all day. It'd be so weird to have a cabbie. That's not a cabbie, that's a personal driver. What's this then? Karnak.
Over the centuries, enthusiasts and historians alike have wondered, who built the Sphinx? For what purpose? And who does it represent? These questions remain unanswered. Several theories do exist, however, some more credible than others. One theory supposes that Jedefre chose to pay homage to his father Khufu by building the Great Sphinx of Giza. The stone temple on the eastern face of the Sphinx would have been added later on by his brother and successor, Khafre, in order to strengthen the divine worship of their father. It would be the first Egyptian temple oriented with the sun.
Yeah, sure. I do like these drawings.
Another theory suggests that the Sphinx was built by Khafre and was meant to represent him. The arguments to support this hypothesis are based on the fact that the limestone beds used for the main work of the Temple of the Sphinx are geographically and architecturally similar to the Valley Temple of Khafre. Some believe that Khufu himself built the Sphinx, which was later finished under his successors, Jetafre and Khafre. These arguments are based on the stylistics of the engraving, the typology of the memes, and the absence of a beard at the time of construction. While ancient Egypt as a whole leaves a rather monochrome vision of its monuments and statuary, it is vital to understand that in ancient times, absolutely everything was painted. The sun, eating away at the pigments of the colors, the sand, the climate, and the implacable impact of time, unfortunately destroyed the glorious colors of the Sphinx of Giza. Documents from an Arab Egyptologist of the 12th century, Abd al-Latif al-Baghdadi, indicate that traces of red were still visible in his time. Today, however, the only color that remains are traces of red close to the ears of the Sphinx, as well as hints of blue and yellow on the nemes, traditional colors for that type of headdress. The pigments for the color red were man-made, obtained by mixing different products such as clay, quartz sand, and very finely crushed hematite.
$500 tip. Damn. You people are generous, Colby. And why isn't John D here? Because that is what he has been saying all the time. That everything was painted.
Red had a strong symbolism in ancient Egypt. It was both the color of life and the color of death. It could represent the sands of the desert or the brilliance of the sun. Red was also associated with the god Seth, vengeful and destructive. The Egyptian word for red, Deshur, is also the word which was used to signify the desert, or the royal crown of Lower Egypt. In art, red was also the color used to paint the bodies of men, while yellow was used for women. It is possible that there were also color restoration efforts during the Saite period about 600 years before Cleopatra's rule, as indicated by notes on the inventory stele, discovered in 1858 by Auguste Mariette. It is because of this that the team made the decision to display it with its full range of colors, even though the Sphinx's colors would have likely faded by Cleopatra's time.
So they painted it even though it wasn't painted at the time. That's nice. Or trace paints. But still $500, a big tip.
Dating from the 4th dynasty, approximately 2600 to 2500 BCE, the Great Sphinx of Giza is the oldest and largest sphinx that we know of. Carved from a natural limestone outcrop, the Sphinx measures 19.8 meters in height, 73.2 meters in length, and 14 meters in width.
Such a shame that erosion has done that. And this was 200 years ago. Not really, but 165? And look, it's still got its nose.
In order to bring polish to the imposing monument, several blocks of limestone were added after the initial construction phase. Since then, there have been numerous attempts at preservation. The polish present in the game integrates some aspects of modern restoration attempts. The team made this choice to present a more iconic version of the Sphinx of Giza to the player. Today, the Sphinx is called the Terrifying One. This appellation is translated from its Arabic name, Abu al-Hal, which in turn was derived from Baluba in Coptic.
Yeah, they could use the proper plaster. You should definitely go down there and fix it up for him, Hatta.
The Sphinx as a whole was carved in situ from a natural stone promontory. Its head was built in a limestone peak of the Mukattam Plate, and the body was sculpted in the underlying rock layer where it is located. The degradation of the Sphinx is due in particular to wind erosion and the different quality of limestone used in its construction. The level of sodium contained in the groundwater which abuts the stone is also a contributing factor.
Yeah. I mean, this is how the Sphinx, it's not Sphinx. Look at that sand. Just look at it.
The natural bedrock is seen through the oblique natural strata of the Sphinx's body that are similar to the surrounding limestone. Since antiquity, people have always believed there was a hidden tomb deep within the Sphinx. It is thought that attempts to plunder the Sphinx began as far back as the First Intermediate period. Since then, numerous attempts to pierce the Sphinx's secrets have been carried out, leaving indelible scars upon the monument.
I mean, this picture is a bit of a false depiction, I gather, because the pyramids are not that peaky.
"12 meters long and cut during pharaonic times, another entrance in the back of the Sphinx aroused curiosity. Although Thutmose IV attempted to seal it off, it was possibly reopened by treasure hunters. It was rediscovered by Howard Vyse and mapped more recently by Mark Lehner. This entrance at the back of the Sphinx leads to different cavities of a few meters each, in directions going inside the statue's body and under the surface. The team has used this opportunity to extrapolate a little more.
Yeah, it's whole cavern system. They integrate the ones that came before, as well as the star map.
While there have been no major discoveries pertaining to the Sphinx of Giza in recent years, theories and hypotheses continue to emerge. Without validation provided by archaeological sources, however, they remain unsubstantiated. The first of the main theories as to the Sphinx of Giza's meaning posits that the Sphinx was originally a massive representation of the god Anubis. Its principal arguments are that the head of the Sphinx is disproportionate compared to the size of its body. The second theory believes that the representation of two sphinxes on the stela of Thutmose IV would indicate that another stone sphinx had existed on the site itself, possibly even in paired symmetry on the other side of the Nile. However, neither of these theories can be verified in any way.
That's a bit of a shame. Is that a cat? What the hell are you doing here?
Several scientific projects using new technologies have been put in place in the past decades.
Slave work
The
had to...
most important was led by Mark Lehner and his team, who specialize in the study and survey of the Giza Plateau, including the Sphinx site. The mapping made it possible to see the materials used to construct the Sphinx, analyze the different layers of erosion, and figure out the most fragile areas to protect. After a few attempts at giving the Sphinx artistic proportions, the team instead decided to use photogrammetry mapping to faithfully reproduce the proportions of the Sphinx. What the Sphinx of Giza represented during its construction and how the Sphinx was perceived by the Egyptians of the New Kingdom are two very different matters. Originally a representation of the king imbued with the power of the lion, the Sphinx was eventually viewed as a direct representation of the most divine. It is theorized that kings of the New Kingdom believed that the Sphinx of Giza was the one who recognized and legitimized the ruler of Egypt. Thus, despite the fact the Sphinx of Giza was partially buried under the sand during his reign, Amenhotep II knew that the monument was of great importance. Amenhotep II built a second temple dedicated for the Sphinx as Horemakhet to pay homage to Khufu and Khafre, his predecessors. It became a common habit for this dynasty to spend time with their royal courts at the Sphinx. Its sanctuary became known as Setepet, the Chosen. Egyptologist Mark Lehner believed that Amenhotep II built a statue of himself anchored between the paws of the Sphinx, likely to legitimize his reign, alongside a stela found by Salim Hassan. Many other pharaohs of this dynasty, such as Tutankhamun and Ramses II, also left marks of their passage in a similar fashion, sometimes even stripping the stones of nearby temples and pyramids to do so. Amenhotep II's son and successor, Thutmose IV, was a frequent offender.
Oh yeah.
While sleeping between the Sphinx's paws, the future Thutmose IV saw in a dream the god Horemakhet proclaiming his coming accession on the throne of the two lands. This was, of course, on the condition that he remove all of the sand covering the Sphinx, which stood guard as the personification of the god, and should thus never be engulfed by the sands of the desert.
This is 1851. All buried in sand. They have excavated it now, haven't they?
The 15-ton dream stela built by Thutmose IV to commemorate his dream was discovered by an Italian Egyptologist, Giovanni Battista Caviglia, in 1818, when he undertook the task of freeing the Sphinx from the sand, which had, yet again, covered it. Caviglia was looking for an entrance into the structure of the Sphinx, but instead he discovered an open-air chapel and stelas between the paws. Ashes from a ceremony were still present. Protected by sand, they quite possibly were from the last ceremonies in Roman times.
Oh God.
That same year, Caviglia discovered fragments of the Sphinx's beard that had probably been added during the New Kingdom. If many of these pieces are held by museums in Cairo, a fragment is displayed at the British Museum, along with a piece of the uraeus that was on the Sphinx's headdress. It is believed this fragment of beard was possibly kept in place thanks to the statue of Amenhotep II, which was supposed to be located under the head of the Sphinx.
But there's no trace of it now, is it?
A popular cultural legend purports that the nose of the Sphinx of Giza was lost during the time of Napoleon Bonaparte to the cannon fire of French soldiers in training. However, engravings from before the time of that campaign already depicted the Sphinx without a nose, indicating that it had been removed before the French campaign.
Oh, Britain.
The most plausible hypothesis is based on the research of the German historian Ulrich Harman. During the 1980s, Harman compiled medieval sources written by Arab authors. In doing so, he discovered that the Sphinx was once perceived as a favorable omen, a deity supporting sediment-nurturing floods and crops. Around 1378, a Sufi by the name of Muhammad Sa'im al-Dar could not stand this vision of the monument, and in an iconoclastic act, broke the nose of the Sphinx. According to the texts, he was then hanged and burned between the legs of the Sphinx for his crime.
Damn. Next door. Is that the last? No, there's more pyramid tours down here.
Welcome to an overview of the Giza necropolis. The Giza Plateau is located on the west bank of the Nile and was considered by ancient Egyptians as the domain of the dead. The pyramidal complexes found there were built over the span of 3 generations, during the reign of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaura.
Well, the pyramids were built in order to commemorate the dead pharaohs. That's why. It's like burial mounds. Hello, Tom. How are you?
The Giza area, now famous for its 3 pyramids, is part of a wider grouping of funerary complexes. Rulers from this period generally elected to be buried in the area. The focal point of the entire region was the city of Memphis, chosen as the capital of Egypt at the beginning of the Old Kingdom.
Very educational, as it always is.
The placement of the Giza monuments, and particularly that of the pyramids, followed a practical yet strict alignment. First, they focused on cardinal points, and then they accounted for the natural geology of the plateau.
Yeah, it's very strange, Brendan, that they didn't have internet back then. What a weird place, hey? So... where's the next... I mean, there are 2 tours up here. Roman, I think. Check the passport. No, Egyptian. Oh no. That's... oh, I like this one. Well, Hatter, if you continue talking like that, we will start calling them Hatter facts. Oh, I missed one up here. Oh, missed. That's daily life, isn't it? Let's go up here. I like keeping it nice and tight. The mad factor, yeah. Welcome to Heraklion. Jean-François Champollion, yeah. I think.
Welcome to Jean-Francois Champollion.
Champollion.
Between the 5th century CE and the Renaissance, knowledge of hieroglyphs was entirely lost. Many enthusiasts tackled the challenge of deciphering the language with little success. Some groundwork was made with various researchers identifying names and some grammatical structure, and confirming that cartouches were markers for royal names. They were still missing a critical piece of information that would eventually be revealed thanks to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone.
Well, we have learned so much, Tom, that statues were originally painted, even though John has been on about that since he saw me play this for the first time. What else? We've learned a bit of the Great Pyramid of Giza. To be honest, I don't really remember a lot.
The Rosetta Stone was found in 1799 by Bouchard, a soldier in Napoleon's army. The stela dates from 196 BCE, written in ancient Egyptian and Greek with 3 scripts: hieroglyphics, Demotic, and Greek alphabet. Following the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte in 1801, the English took possession of the stone. It has been at the British Museum since 1802 and remains the most visited object of the museum to date.
I might go there. Oh, I don't burn cats.
The first translation was of the Greek section only in 1803. It detailed a decree of Pharaoh Ptolemy V, reminding the citizens that their pharaoh had led Egypt to prosperity. It was fully translated 20 years after by Jean-François Champollion, who was working with a facsimile.
Oh. They will never forget it, Tom. Hello, Paul. Or good.
Through his studies
Noon.
of the stone, Champollion was able to make a
morning.
critical observation that would unlock the whole mystery: that hieroglyphics were not only ideograms, but also phonograms. Hieroglyphs consist of phonetic glyphs, single characters, and logograms. Essentially, they are a combination of phonetics, alphabet, and full words, which in total form a language.
That would be so interesting to learn to speak. Or interpret, at least. Yeah, they just thought it. They just told us that, Bill, in the beginning. The most visited item in the entirety of the museum, I think. Well, Tom, I think that tech
While
got
studying the stone,
its name
Champollion
from the
realized
stone.
that there was a difference in the number of hieroglyphic characters in relation to the number of Greek characters for the same word. This led him to believe that hieroglyphs must have phonetic characteristics. This was the first step to unlocking the Rosetta Stone's secrets. To prove this theory, Champollion began identifying Egyptian rulers' names and then compared their phonetic pronunciation to the Greek version. For example, Cheops had been the Greek name given by ancient chroniclers to the owner of the Great Pyramid, Khufu.
Huh. Well, what do you know?
The next step for Champollion was to confirm that his approach was verifiable by using the Philae obelisk as an additional reference. Engraved in the obelisk are 2 inscriptions in Egyptian hieroglyphs and Greek. Once he confirmed the names of Ptolemy and Cleopatra within these texts and confirmed the same phonetic patterns as on the Rosetta Stone, Champollion knew he was on the right track.
Temple of Iset. Iset.
Champollion had already mastered several ancient languages when he took on deciphering the Rosetta Stone. He used his knowledge of Coptic to identify the solar disk hieroglyph on the obelisk as the phonetic translation of Ra. Further translation only strengthened his conclusion. Egyptian hieroglyphs encompass the alphabet in both phonetics and determinative ways, which means that the symbol represents the word itself.
I wish I could read that. Thank you, Tom. Oh, you mean the word that comes up that is on top of the thing when someone comments? That is transmitting, or well, on the English version it says live. Or sending. It's pronounced sender. Which is, well, sending, transmitting. On the English version it's live. So it just shows that I am streaming live. That's basically all it means. There was another one. Not up there, but here. I'm gonna do a bit of fast traveling here, so. Yeah. As I said before, I have my system language on Swedish, and I can't be bothered to change it. Up there. Oh boy.
Take your time. I'll wait.
Thank you for the tweet, Tom.
It's not like ancient Egypt is going anywhere.
Well, we didn't really have any classes in ancient Egypt, I think. It's a specialized... It's not part of modern history. Oh boy,
Welcome to
that's a crocodile.
Flora of Ancient Egypt. The climate and unique geography of the Nile Delta offered a wide variety of plant species. Many of these plants served as sustenance for ancient Egyptians and as crops for trade. The Nile's consistent seasons allowed Egypt to sustain itself for centuries.
What was the talk called? Was it fauna or flora? Flora.
Possibly the most useful of the plants was the papyrus. This tall sedge plant grew in abundance along the water's edge of the Nile. Commonly known for its use as paper, the ancient Egyptians found many other functions for it, including rope, sandals, and mats. Papyriform boats made from the plant are seen in paintings and
Hi, James.
and were used in ritualistic ceremonies.
It's going well. We're learning about the flora of ancient Egypt at the moment. I didn't know papyrus was water plants.
There were many types of trees along the River Nile, such as the date palm, carob, and tamarisk. The earliest fruit tree cultivated was the fig tree, followed by apple, pomegranate, and eventually olive trees during the era of the New Kingdom. Mango cultivation was the result of a late import from Asia during the Middle Ages.
Mango.
Some trees were associated with gods, such as the acacia with Horus. The divinities Thoth and Seshat were depicted inscribing the reign of the king into a Persea tree. The sycamore was connected with the goddess Iset,
Sycamore
patron
tree.
of the ritual of life.
Sing a song for me.
Try using your ego when you want a top-down view.
Oh, he has streamed, Brendan. He streamed yesterday.
Welcome to Agriculture and Seasons.
I think his kids been off school, so there are 3 trees.
While crops were cultivated in
There are
different
3
oases
trees,
around the
Father.
desert, most of the arable lands were near the Nile. 2 types of cereal grain were cultivated, barley and an ancient wheat known as emmer. These 2 key ingredients contributed in establishing bread and beer as the staple of the Egyptian diet and the basis of its economy.
Good morning, Rage. How are you doing, lady? Something's irritating my throat and I am putting a mic. I'm just fine. Apart from the fact that I don't want to get a migraine. And also I laugh at your cold,
an agricultural revolution
even though
with
it's
the introduction of
about 6
advanced
degrees here now.
agricultural techniques
8.
and new grain types such as rice,
Minus
durum
8.
wheat, and pearl millet. The resulting agricultural mass production greatly increased the economy of ancient Egypt. It also prompted the development of storage and transportation, allowing long-distance trade with other regions.
Thank you for the follow, Mrs. Smith. Yeah, it was minus 13 here last night. Minus 11 this morning. Not that I've been outside or anything. Hello, cow. No potatoes. However will you cope, Brendan?
Both bread and beer rations were part of a system of barter payment. The state used those goods to pay wages for those who worked in the quarries and at the construction sites. Beer was so important to ancient Egyptians, they had a goddess of beer brewing, Tenenet. Tenenet is seen in many paintings and sculptures with beer, and women are depicted as the primary beer makers.
Hello, Graham. Tenenet, the god of beer. Yes, no potato. I see fields so green, no roses though. Nothing blooms for me and you, and I think to myself, what another great world this is. I don't know. I'm usually quite good at improv, but not when I'm on the spot.
In order to increase agricultural production, fertile land was divided into plots and large agricultural
Thank you for the
villages
host,
were
Rach.
encouraged. The state and temples were the biggest landowners. Depending on the region, fertile land was managed by civil servants or rented to individuals. Ancient Egyptians relied on rudimentary tools for land cultivation. Soil was broken down with hoes, and wing plows were used to make furrows.
Hello, Johnny. Is that a fish in it? Oh, it's way over there. Thank you for the host, Mrs. Smith. I think. I can't read the name because it has the that's automatic hose. It's half the bar. But I'm guessing it's you. Yep, it's Mr. Smith. Well, we are learning about all of the kingdoms, so it's, I would say, ancient Egypt. But the game is set in the Ptolemaic era, late Ptolemaic era, the last pharaohs of Egypt, all that.
The 3 seasons known as Akhet,
And thank you for the
and
host,
Shemu
Tom, as well.
corresponded to a specific phase of the agricultural process and the river's natural changes. Akhet was the time of the flood, beginning with the appearance of the star Sirius in July. Heret was the time when lands were cultivated, plowed, and sown. This fell between October and November. Shemu ran from May to September and was when harvesting and taxation began.
So these are the... Oh, seasons. They're just the 3 seasons. Since I don't have a camera, you can't see it, but when I said 3, I held up 4 fingers. I can't count. 3 seasons. So it's like... Akhet is like summer, fall-ish. Parrot is also fall. Wait. This I'm confused. I have a chatbot, Johnny. I'm just gonna check where my commands are. See, I got a bot. Oh, bye, Graham. Thank you for the host, Johnny. Oh, we were talking to Colby? I don't know. Crocodiles. Hello, Abs. Welcome to the stream. Even though it's not really afternoon, it's noon. It's almost high noon. Like that. Something tells me that those are not supposed to be on the side. What do you think?
The pharaoh's duty was to uphold order against chaos and provide for his people. Priests and local governors also wanted to appear as protectors of the people. However, any variation in the Nile's seasons could cause water shortages. This had devastating consequences on wheat and barley crops. The pharaoh, administrators, and priests knew they needed to demonstrate their ability to prevent such a catastrophe from happening. And so they invented the story, which would be inscribed upon the famine stela.
Huh. So where are you, Abs? Eastern Europe? Seeing as you are +2. Ooh. That's cool. I didn't know that. It's just that most of my views are European or American. Ever had an Egyptian before? But you might not be Egyptian, you might just live in Cairo. Rage has been here all morning, almost, Johnny. Not really. She's been here. That's cool, dude. I can't believe I said dude.
The story begins with the pharaoh worried for his people. The Nile hasn't flooded in years, and his people are starving. In search of the origins of the flooding, Djoser seeks out Khnum, the protector god of the region and the source of the drought. Djoser gives the god offerings and orders his priests to restore the temple of Khnum. These offerings please the god, and the floods are restored. This story was intended to highlight the importance of the deity in everyone's daily lives, while also demonstrating the crucial role that the priests and the king played in feeding and protecting the people of Egypt.
Cool. Well, Cairo wasn't founded in this era, as you can see. Think here? Because there's the Giza Plateau. I think Cairo is just north of that. I'm not sure though. But the game map is not. It is around here. Nice. I have my geography in check. Not really. Next thingy down here. 'Cause I was walking in Memphis. Even though the map is not exactly 1-1, it's still pretty accurate, isn't it? Because you can see the pyramids from Cairo and vice versa. I know, because I've seen pictures. Follow the yellow brick road. Why are you going that way? Oh. Let's stop following the road, please. Boy, trees.
If you have some time, check out Alexandria. It's one of the greatest cities in antiquity. Welcome to the city of Memphis.
I like giraffes and camels.
Throughout all ancient Egyptian periods, cities had one thing in common. They were situated along the Nile's shores. Cities were often designated for government or for worship. Major cities had several temples dedicated to numerous gods and goddesses. Egyptians referred to the organization of their cities as a sepat, or later on by the Persian term nome. There were 20 sepat in Lower Egypt and 22 in Upper Egypt. The capital city of ancient Egypt changed many times over the periods.
So you have to go sideways in order to view the map in its form. Ah, Cairo is on the other side of the Nile. So it's not here at all, it's more here? Really? I don't know. Yeah, I would like to visit Egypt too. Just is Egypt's not fighting anymore,
One of
is
the
it?
largest was Memphis, located in Lower Egypt. It was a key center for religious temples, including their most important deity, Ptah, god of creation. Thebes, located in Upper Egypt, competed with Memphis and featured as both a political and a religious center. Two important temples, Luxor and Karnak, were built there. A minor capital of the Sayyid dynasty was the city of Sais. This was the last native Egyptian capital of Egypt.
Oh. You're actually gonna visit Thebes in the next DLC for this. And Valley of the Kings.
During the Third Dynasty, under Pharaoh Djoser, Memphis became the first religious and administrative capital of Egypt. Even when the political capital of Egypt decentralized itself, pharaohs were crowned in this sacred city in order to legitimize their ascension to the throne, up to and including Alexander the Great. Though little remains today save ruins south of Cairo, we can
that's
guess
nice,
at the
Abs.
structure of the city, which stretched up to 5 kilometers in length and 2 kilometers in width.
Such a shame that Memphis doesn't exist anymore. I think. Because they are talking like it doesn't exist, so.
Memphis was also referred to as the City with the 100 Doors, or the White Walls. These names were in reference to the wall which surrounded the city. Under the protection of Ptah, god of craftsmen, the city was a thriving religious and economic hub.
I think Memphis is the city in Prince of Egypt, about Moses and the Exodus. Yeah, I'm walking in Memphis.
Welcome to Artisans of Ancient. It was under the watchful eye of Ptah of Memphis, the god of craft and architecture, that ancient Egyptians developed
Yeah,
a
that's
unique
the animated
rendition
one,
of
abs.
the world they lived in. However, it is vital to understand that their view of art, and those who created it, was likely very dissimilar to the modern concept of the word. Instead of artists, the creative culture had skilled and respected artisans. The most significant categories of specialties for crafters were drawing, painting, sculpture, and metalworking.
I think you can. Is it called dreidel? I'm not sure.
Ancient Egyptian craftspeople created both art and a wide variety of mundane, everyday tools. Every item created had a specific purpose and was produced by anonymous artisans who worked alone or with a team. Most crafts, such as pottery and metalworking, were utilized for everyday items. Luxury goods and artwork illustrations served temple rituals and were not meant for public display. Artisans rarely signed their names to the work, though they were clearly aware that they possessed a unique skill and talent for the task.
I wanna see if I can do some pottery. Oh, no pottery table in the forgers. So sad. Yeah.
Art, in all its forms, has offered not only a practical insight into the way ancient Egyptians lived, but in how they viewed the world and their place in it. The balance of order and chaos was crucial in both the physical and the metaphysical universes. As a result, their art appears to follow a strict set of stylistic conventions that supported this worldview. From households and palaces to temples and tombs, pottery, papyrus, and textile items were essential to the everyday life of ancient Egyptians. In ancient Egyptian culture, drawing was used as illustration, such as seen in the Book of the Dead. It was also the first step in the creation of a relief, painting, or statue. Two-dimensional representations were concerned with order and form, and were intended to honor gods and promote the transition of the soul to the afterlife.
Maybe we should have taken the boat. Hello, Mr. Crocodile. Hello, Mrs. Crocodile. Don't eat me.
Stylistically, Egyptians were concerned with the depiction of the human form's inner self. As such, artistic representations were not concerned with realism, but rather with idealized youth and perfectly harmonious visuals.
So that is Nefertiti. I always thought that was Cleopatra. Oh, otters are the cutest. Did you know that otters hold hands while sleeping so they don't drift off? as we sleep in the water. Oh, hello. This is odd.
An exception to this were scenes depicting hunting and battle, where the environment and enemies moved in lively, even chaotic ways. Animals and foes were depicted piled up, as if describing chaos, with Egyptians standing in solemn, disciplined poses, bringing order to the scene. Reliefs could be either in high relief or low relief. Either method required a surface suited to the desired technique. Preparation of the surfaces differed depending on the quality of the rock. A quarried block only needed a simple smoothing. Rough-cut rock monuments, such as those found in tombs, required more work. Often the surface was coated in plaster before being sculpted. For reliefs, preliminary sketches were drawn in red, then framed with a red grid to position the elements of the scenes. Corrected sketches were in black, and once approved, the scene was ready to be carved. This method likely explains the name given to relief makers, the one who draws the outlines.
Is this the Temple of Ptah? Oh, they don't... In the main game there's text of significant landmarks. I think this is the Temple of Ptah.
Statues were believed to be vessels for the souls of the deceased, or deities.
Morning, or
That
evening,
is why a
Molo.
sculptor was called the one who makes it live. This divine duty earned them the utmost respect. As with a relief, creation of a sculpture began with a drawing. Most statues were made of quarried blocks of stone, primarily limestone, though sometimes harder stones such as quartzite were also used.
So this is how they made the statues then?
In ancient Egypt, the profession of crafter was organized and relied on a specific hierarchy.
Yeah, I'm still
Most artisans
six
depended on
viewers,
an
6
institution
follows
to
away
provide them with
from
raw materials.
affiliate.
There
Molo.
were 3 working levels for craftsmanship: domestic, large estates, and within palace and
I
temple
think.
workshops. Some royal workshops, at their largest, covered an area of about 2.8 square kilometers in size.
Yeah, I'm not a murderer outside of gaming. I mean, this is Assassin's Creed, not Talking Creed.
At the domestic level, most Egyptians were craftspeople to a greater or lesser extent. The ability to repair tools was a daily necessity. Crafted everyday items could also be bartered for.
Yeah, that
at the
is
local market.
mental, Molo.
Artisans with skills but lacking in resources worked at large estates, where the elite provided them with space to work and raw materials. The most skilled artisans were employed in royal or temple projects and benefited from a special status. They were provided with good workspaces and considered to be highly skilled.
Neferabu and his colleague, the artist Manakbut. Naktut. Naktut. Oh my. Oh, that is cute, Colby. Oh. Oh, that was so cute. To be fair, baby anythings are cute. Look at that nice emote, Mallow. Doggy must be proud. That's his tier 2 emote,
text
Mallow.
known as the Satires of Trades has a number of descriptive summaries that offer teasing glimpses into how artisans were perceived. A coppersmith was said to stink and have fingers that resembled crocodile droppings, while potters were said to be like those who lived in bogs. This view was likely exaggerated in order to highlight the most enviable position of all, that of the scribe.
Oh yeah, that is a long name. I would not choose a long name if I get to make an emote. I would just, if I used my Red Panda, it would be like,
located near the
hello.
Valley of the Kings, Deir el-Medina was a settlement created by order of the king to honor the most skilled artisans. Its name translates as the Monastery of the City. Allocated a house on the initiative of the king, these craftsfolk were regarded with respect and referred to as the royal artisans. Those who lived there worked on the tombs in the Valley of the Kings and its surrounding temples.
Yeah, I mean, hi noob. Yeah, that would be interesting, but they're gonna have pharaohs in the next DLC to this, although there will be dead pharaohs. So, yeah.
Archaeologists believe the site was home to skilled and respected artisans for over 400 years. It is considered one of the most important discoveries relating to Egyptian daily life. While much of the focus of Egyptian archaeology was on its kings and queens, it wasn't until the excavation of Deir el-Medina that Egyptologists were given a valuable window into the community life of ancient Egyptian artisans.
I won't do that, Brendan. I don't want to be associated with that guy. Yeah, it looks great, abs. And the bosses seem to be more of Dark Soulsy, if that's a word. Next tour, mummies. Oh no, we have awakened the rage. The rage, not the rage. Someone say Dark Souls? Dark Souls! Yeah, they seem. I've seen a video and they're called Shadows, I think, and they have massive weapons, some of them, and it just looks kind of Dark Souls bossy out. It looks like Dark Souls bosses, but not really. Oh my god, orange carrots. I'm so triggered. I am so triggered right now. I can't even. I need to look away. I just can't. The gods will be back, Bill.
Oh, wait.
Next
Not
up
like
is
ancient Egypt
Anubis,
is going anywhere.
I think. It's coming later this month. Triggered.
Welcome to
I am triggered.
Mummies of Ancient Egypt.
No matter in the time that this is placed, 48 BCE, carrots were purple, not orange. Orange carrots came about in Middle Ages? Or Medieval Ages, I don't know. I'm not really triggered, Mother.
The mummification process used by ancient Egyptians was
being
highly ceremonial
John
in
D.
nature. The different types of mummification took into account the social level and richness of the deceased and even included animals. The most expensive was that reserved for the pharaoh and the royal family, as well as some of the wealthiest members of the court.
Yeah, the god trials still rotate up since people are getting the game, and if you don't do all... You need to do 4 separate trials. So you need to do all 3 and then you need to do 1 again in order to get all the items of the gear. We was bothered because I missed the first Anubis one because I got the game late, so I didn't have enough. So I wasn't level 40 when it came out. And then I did the Sobek and... Oh, what's it called? What's she called? It's Sekhmet. I did those 2, and then I did Anubis, and then I did Anubis again, but I didn't get anything back from it, so I needed to wait until Sobek came along again. Which was a bit of a bother, but it just takes a bunch of methods. No, oranges did not exist in Egypt at this time, I think. The toughest god was Sekhmet for me because she had the... No, it was Anubis, wasn't it? Because he's... No, which one was it? I think it was Anubis because he had the ranged attack. I need more followers, Colby. I need 6 more in order to get 50, and I need 50 in order to be able or considered to be affiliate. And then I will be able to get subs and bits and emotes and stuff.
The first step
I'll
was
not say
cool.
Johnny.
Once bodies arrived at the mummification site, they were placed on inclined tables while the bodily fluids drained away. They were then cleansed by priests until they were deemed ready for the purification process.
I think my average is... I haven't checked. I can look now actually at my statistics. In the last 30 days I have an average viewership of 8. Oh, thank you for the host, Abs. I appreciate it. I'm very sensitive about my
Purification of the body
pronunciation,
began with a
guys.
libation
Sorry.
from sacred water. The priest then fumigated the body with terebinth resin. After the ritual cleansing, priests used oils, spices, and
Junction.
all kinds of essences to further purify the body of the deceased. Finally, all body hair was meticulously removed. Once the body was properly purified, embalmers removed the organs, following very specific procedures.
Lock away,
First,
Paul.
the brain was extracted by inserting a spoon through the nostril to break the ethmoid bone. Then, using a spatula, the pieces of the brain were removed as thoroughly as possible. What matter remained was extracted after a process of liquefaction, achieved through the use of a caustic liquid. The cranial box, once emptied, was rinsed and disinfected with palm wine, and then stuffed with strips of linen cloth and liquefied resin.
Yeah, that's gross. Oh no, that's too bad, Rach. Yanabob. Oh, Brendan, I don't think that's true.
After taking care of the brain, embalmers made an incision on the left flank and carefully set aside the viscera. The inside of the body was also rinsed with palm wine. Then the embalmers filled the belly with pure myrrh, cinnamon, and other perfumes, and sewed it shut. The removed viscera were washed in palm wine and packed in crushed herbs before being placed in canopic jars.
Brandon. That Brandon is such an idiot. I mean, this is fascinating and all, but it's still kind of gross.
Canopic jars were placed close to the sarcophagus or kept in a chest nearby. At first, the viscera were wrapped in tissue and placed in the vases. As the ritual requirements became more elaborate, ointments, spices, and even water and natron were added to the process.
I don't know, Molo. I'm not that concerned. I think I have one bot follow already, but I'm not sure. There's a bot called Ghost Menagerie, I think, that follows Lard, that has followed me as well. I'm not sure if it's a bot, but it's a... bot in the bot.
Towards the middle of the New Kingdom, canopic jars assumed the appearance of the four sons of Horus. They were known as the protectors of the viscera. These protectors had their own guardians, each a goddess of the dead. Imseti, the human-headed god, protected the liver and was protected by the goddess Iset. Hapi, the baboon-headed god, protected the lungs and was protected by the goddess Nephthys. Dumatef, the jackal-headed god, protected the stomach and was protected by the goddess Neith. And finally, Kebesenuef, the falcon-headed god, protected the intestines and was protected by the goddess Selket.
That's interesting. It's weird that the jackal is not Anubis, but rather Neith. Nath.
Natron is a naturally occurring mineral found in evaporite. These sedimentary rocks are made up of mineral salts and were generally mined from lake beds in Egypt.
Yeah, Nightcat was modded on Ian streams. And it's a he. The cat thing confuses people apparently. But which is more rad, electrical skateboard or electrical skeleton?
To dry the flesh and stop the corpse's putrefaction process. Once the body was cleansed and eviscerated, the deceased was covered in natron for about 40 days. Once desiccated, the body was prepared to be wrapped in strips of linen.
Yeah, natron dries the body, I think. Some basic sarcophagi. And a little more lavish ones. That's for a pharaoh.
Once the body was fully desiccated by the natron treatment, embalmers oiled, painted, and sometimes even added hair extensions or a wig. They often used a henna-based antiseptic preparation to give the body a more colorful and lively appearance, while preparing it to resist molds and fungi.
I might do Rage, seeing as it's free. I'm not sure when I'm gonna fit it though. Huh. Human hair and beeswax. Yeah.
Next came the phase which gave mummies their most well-known appearance, the wrapping. Originally, each part of the body was wrapped separately. Men had their arms crossed on their chests,
not wrapping,
while
as in
women
wrap.
had the right arm folded over their breasts and the left arm stretched along the body. However, techniques evolved over time. Eventually, the body as a whole was wrapped with limbs alongside
Did
the
someone say
body,
Bloodborne?
and increasingly sophisticated and different techniques of weaving flax bands were developed.
I always thought that mummies were buried with their arms crossed over their chest, like they are on the sarcophagi of the pharaoh. You always have the crossed arms with the thingies.
In addition to the jewelry and amulets arranged on the skin of the deceased, amulets were also carefully inserted into the weaving of the linen strips. Each amulet was linked to a myth, or to an ideological belief related to rebirth.
Cool. I don't know how to work this. Oh, bless you back. I'm guessing we're doing incense or something. I would recommend this game, yes, Noob. If you like RPGs, this is a light one. Snivel, snivel. Praying. Yeah, plus Bayek. I'm kinda interested in Burnout Paradise as well, because I love Burnout Takedown on PS2. I didn't get to play Burnout on PS3 though, which is a shame.
Masks were an important part of a mummy's finery. Early wooden funeral coverings were very expensive, however, and soon replaced by masks created through a technique known as cartonnage. Masks fashioned with this method were created by laying several layers of linen or papyrus pulp on a base made of mud or straw. Cartonnage was used for more than funerary masks. Ornaments and the animal coffins of the late period were also made in such a fashion.
I would, yeah, Brennan, Assassin's Creed has a supernatural angle to it, but it's mostly science fiction more than fantasy, because you have the Animus, which is technology, and then you have the ones that came before, or the precursors, which are, they are basically aliens, humanoid creatures that were deemed as deities in the ancient times. So most of the deities in Egypt are based on the deities, on the ones that came before. It's very convoluted. Oh my gosh, look at that butt. Hello, Neo.
Cartonnage evolved to cover the entire body of the mummy during the 22nd dynasty. The mummies were placed on a board inside a rigid envelope of cartonnage, which was laced at the back with a string. Extremely cost-effective and visually pleasing, this technique was very popular through all layers of the society.
Thank you, Colby.
Cartonnage envelopes were usually covered with inscriptions and polychrome decorations, specifying the names and titles of the deceased, scenes depicting daily life, or decorations specific to the funerary world. This was a true gift for Egyptologists eager to study the funerary rites of the ancient Egyptians.
I mean, I like the art of the ancient Egypt as a whole.
Once the mummy was properly wrapped and adorned, the embalmers proceeded with the ceremony of the opening of the mouth. A vital step of the funerary process, this ceremony was meant to bring back to life the deceased themselves, or an object representing the deceased.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to that as well, Paul. Not the spamming part, but having a red panda emote that I made myself.
There were no less than 75 different stages for the opening of the mouth. It required the application of the same oils, ointments, spices, and perfumes used during the mummification process. Makeup was sometimes part of the process as well.
Maybe as a tier 3 Molo. I'm not sure though. I don't know about you, but the top ones are oddly familiar.
The last stage of this long ritual was the
Where's
act of
the red
touching the milk with your
panda?
pads to symbolically allow the breath of life to infuse an innate body.
Red panda, baby.
Its performance was reserved for a very specific set of people. Priests who wore the mask of the god Anubis, a close relative of the family, or by the heir to the throne.
Oh my god, it's so cute. It's so cute. So cute. Only 2 things left here in Memphis. I just realized that I've called my red panda wrong a bit. Thank you for the Twitter follow, Abs. The tail of those red panda are red and white, while I have red and black. But it doesn't really matter, does it? Because the faces are more white than red. But once again, it doesn't really matter. Now that I made it, I'm gonna stick by it. Because it's so cute. Oh, damn it. Took a wrong turn. Very true, Hatter, very true.
Three things are necessary when exploring Egypt.
A
Water,
good camera, and an omnipresent
voice
coming from nowhere.
Welcome to the major regions of Egypt.
It requires a bow. Oh my god, that's a ferret. That's a ferret. It's so cute. Biting the fingers. Oh my god, it's so cute. Thank you, Brendan. No, I won't do that, Hatter, because I'm not that good at talking.
Life in ancient Egypt was concentrated along the shores of the Nile and divided
Oh, it's a weasel.
into two regions. Lower Egypt was
freaking
situated
cute.
on the Nile Delta near the Mediterranean, and Upper Egypt was at the south reaching into Africa. Due to its proximity to the Mediterranean, temperatures
Locked
in
away,
Lower
Tom.
Egypt were less extreme than in Upper Egypt.
The Nile. The Nile.
Until 3100 BCE and the unification of Egypt, each region had its own pharaoh and crown. Lower Egypt's crown was red and marked with symbols of papyrus and bees. Upper Egypt's crown was white with symbols of lotus and sedge grass.
I like otters as well. They're well cute. Apparently anything that is oblong and has tiny legs, I think it's very, very cute.
Both regions had competing major cities, most notably Memphis in Lower Egypt and Thebes in Upper Egypt. There were different religious cults in both regions, each worshipping their own major gods.
So weird that they talk about upper and lower, but Lower Egypt is north and Upper Egypt is south. So it's kind of reverse. I'm guessing it's about more geographical than geological. I'm meaning that Upper Egypt is higher than Lower Egypt. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not God. Temple of Ptah. But it's just pronounced Ta because the P is silent. Just like when you gotta go in the middle of the night and don't want to wake your parents.
Many of the temples were designed in such a way as to represent the two regions, and ceremonies often incorporated Upper and Lower Egypt in their rituals.
Huh. That's horrifying, Mallow. I hope you're not too horrified by that. Next to our Blitz. If that's the Temple of Ptah. No, this is the Temple of Ptah. That's the palace, I think. No? Yes. Yes. That's okay, Paul. I'm gonna keep that in mind.
Try using your eagle when you want a top-down view.
I just like flutes when they sound right, and that sounds just right. Yeah, this is the Temple of Ptah. The one I was in earlier was the palace.
Welcome to Temples and Priests. From its foundation, the city of Memphis favored worship of the god Ptah. The main temple of Ptah was known as Hutkaptah, meaning Palace of the Ka of Ptah. The name of the temple, translated into Greek as Aegyptos, would eventually evolve into the modern name Egypt.
So the name of the Temple of Ptah named the entire nation. I've streamed for 2 hours now, so probably another half hour maybe? I don't know. Tom? Not for long though.
Temples were the center of religious, political, and economic life in ancient Egypt. These sacred places were viewed as the literal home of the gods and goddesses. As such, every aspect of them required care and reverence, all of which was accomplished through elaborate ritual.
Hermopolis.
Located in the center of Memphis, the Temple of Ptah was the most prominent and imposing building in the city. The long walkway leading toward the temple, known as the Dromos, was guarded by rows of sphinxes. The entire sacred area was designed to keep the statue of the god protected, deep within the sacred enclosures that surrounded it.
I mean, the amount, even though this is probably not, this is very impressive, I must say. Spider Mallow, does whatever a spider Mallow can. Can it swing from a web? No, it can't, because that's not real. Look out, here comes the Spider Mallow.
The Dromos opened into a courtyard, with the surrounding portico graced with columns carved to resemble palm trees. During special festivals, the general population was allowed to enter this location, but under no circumstances would they be allowed into the sacred spaces beyond the courtyard.
Okay.
Memphis Alabaster Sphinx was discovered in 1912, almost completely buried in water and sand. 8 meters in height and weighing in at roughly 90 tons, it is still mounted on its original pedestal.
Cool.
Though it is called the Alabaster Sphinx, it was in fact carved from common calcite rock, which is similar in appearance and texture to alabaster. Erosion has destroyed the original engravings, making it difficult to determine when it was created. Egyptologists believe that its facial likeness resembles Amenhotep II, and so it could have been sculpted somewhere between 1700 and 1400 BCE.
Yeah.
It is believed that this
That's-
monument
that's
once
fu-
stood
that's funny,
outside of the Temple
Tom.
of Ptah and was integrated into subsequent extensions to the complex. The size of the imposing sculpture reflects the importance it had to the temple during the New Kingdom. This Sphinx is one of the few remaining artifacts from the ruins of Memphis to survive.
Spider bro, he will help you move your bones. No, wait. Spider bro, does whatever a spider bro does. He will help you move house because he's your real bro. Look out, here comes the spider bro. That was not as good, but whatever. I had it in my head, and once I have something in my head, I can't say it. Right, bye Hatter. Might see you later.
In Egyptian culture, some animals were associated with gods, while others were considered to be living gods. The Apis bull was believed to be a divine entity. The earliest mention of the Apis bull in ancient Egypt goes back as far as the first Egyptian dynasty.
That's cool. I wonder if the Apis bull was the influence for the golden calf in the Bible.
Originally the
Why
symbol
did
of
the
fertility,
why did the fly
the
fly?
Apis bull
Because the
was
spider
linked to
spied
the
her.
god Ra, with the image of the sun carried between its horns. Later it was associated with Osiris, the ruler of the underworld, thus becoming the funerary divinity Osorapis. During the 18th dynasty in Memphis, the Apis bull's association with the city's deity earned it the title Herald of Ptah. The Apis bull was so revered that even Alexander the Great, upon his arrival in Memphis, gave honor to Apis.
That's good form. Moo.
The Apis bull lived with its harem in a sacred barn located in an enclosure in the Temple of Ptah. Each bull bore 29 signs representative of its divinity. Among them, the bull had an eagle-shaped mark on its back, a double tail hair, and a scarab-shaped mark under the tongue. The signs were intended to correspond with the lunar cycle. After its death, Egyptians would search for its reincarnated form among the livestock. Like other living divinities, the mortal incarnation of the Apis bull was prayed to, and when it died, it was given a luxurious funeral, which included mummification. Until the
funny,
reign
noob.
of Ramses II, the Apis bulls were buried in individual graves in Saqqara. During the 26th dynasty, the bodies of the bulls were buried in enormous stone vats in the underground corridors of the Serapeum of Memphis.
Well, most would say R, Bill, but everyone knows that a pirate's true heart lies in the sea.
Ancient Egyptians believed that temple rituals were essential to maintain order in the cosmos and allow communication between humans and gods. The pharaoh was required to bring offerings as part of a twofold promise made to the gods: to remain a just ruler and to prevent chaos from entering Egypt.
So they believe that praying could solve things too, eh? How far we've come.
Details of the ceremonies found on temple walls provide a thorough overview of the stages of the daily ritual. Performed 3 times a day to mirror human mealtimes, each step of the highly symbolic ceremony was accompanied by specific recitations, many of which referred to mythical events.
Yep, you succumb to that hunger, Tom. Have a good lunch, and I'll see you in your stream later
The
on.
high priest would first awaken the sleeping god with a chant. Then the seals of the shrine's doors were broken, and the
Unless you're
bolts
eating and
drawn
watching,
back.
I don't know.
The act of swinging open the doors was a symbolic gesture, where sight was granted to the deity. The priest would then bow and kiss the ground.
Thank you, Tom. Have a good one.
The god was then washed with incense-infused water, and its mouth rinsed with mineral salts. The cleansing was followed by adorning the statue with jewels and royal garments. The final ritual required the priest to sweep away any footprints in order to prevent evil from approaching the god.
Okay. I don't know, Paul, why?
Heredity was the primary source of new recruits. Rarely was an outsider allowed this position. At the top of the temple hierarchy was the high priest. Each temple dedicated to a god had at least one high priest devoted to its care and service.
Oh, Paul.
During the Ptolemaic dynasty, one family held the position of high priest in Memphis for almost 300 years.
Nice, Rach. What does that mean? I don't really know what the badges are. Is it like the sub badge or the Twitch Prime badge?
High priest candidates made their way up the ranks of the temple hierarchy. The one
Oh,
chosen
is that
to
what it
occupy
is?
the lofty position of high priest was usually confirmed by the pharaoh. Several of the high priests were also important officials in the government. Families sharing the highest priesthood titles tended to make many alliances, thereby gaining more land and wealth. Shifting balances of power sometimes resulted in more or less open conflicts between the priesthood and the pharaohs.
Well, isn't the bit badges the one we already have, the grey, purple, green, red ones? Hello? Or is it something else?
In the 21st dynasty, Thebes became the capital of
Yeah,
an almost
that's what I meant.
entirely theocratic government. The city was headed by king priests who spoke and governed in the name of the god Amun, in open opposition to the ruling pharaohs. These king priests caused a massive decentralization of power, known as the Third Intermediate Period.
Do they have a new bit badge? Huh?
The educational
that's cool.
institution in ancient Egypt was known as the House of Life. Attended by the offspring of the elite and the clergy, it was a place tailored to the social status of its attendees. The earliest references to this type of institution date back to royal decrees of the Old Kingdom.
Right, see you later, Abs. Thank you for coming and watching. I appreciate it as always. Thank you for the follow, noob. It's also appreciated. Now I am 5 follows away from affiliate. No, being.
Only 2 known centers have been uncovered. One in the abandoned city of Akhetaten, and one at the temple of Ramses II on the west bank of Thebes. Inscriptions uncovered in those locations mention the names and titles of people who were connected with the House of Life, such as a chief physician and many scribes.
Thank you for the host
It is
as well.
presumed that by the late kingdom, every temple had a House of Life.
What's this? House of Life, huh?
The House of Life offered training for the elite, destined for occupations such as astronomers, doctors, veterinarians, diplomats, architects, translators, or theologians. Some institutions focused on specific disciplines, making them a central hub for the country. Not limited to instruction for young students, the House of Life was a source of reference for many scholars, with rooms dedicated to papyri of many disciplines.
Pikachu!
Because papyri were preserved there,
I
the
can't do a
Greco-Romans
Pikachu
referred
voice,
to the House
sorry.
of Life as a library.
I can't go up that high. Your emote spamming builds allowed in moderate amounts, of course.
ancient Egyptian economy was based on an unequal system of redistribution of goods. The state of Egypt collected the crops, and the temples distributed them throughout the provinces.
Look at all those
Since the only people capable of
emotes.
counting and ensuring a fair redistribution were the educated scribes, this meant that the temples played a pivotal role in this process. There are records of pharaohs making offerings of large tracts of land and animals to temples in order to maintain their favor. Ramses III offered generous gifts to the temple of Amun in Karnak in such a manner.
Oh yeah, Rach. You always put others before the mission, don't you?
Palaces, warehouses, and granaries were built inside the temple compound to better control the redistribution of goods. The size of the recorded numbers of goods, combined with every other function filled by temples, only serves to confirm their might as economic, religious, and political centers of power within Egypt.
Ah, that's the tour done. It's time set. It's just 1:15 here. I'm gonna check if there's any tour that is short. 3 minutes. It would take 5 to get there, maybe. If we find a way out of here, that is. Sorry. You might have to wait a bit longer. Move. Am I even running the right way? I don't know.
Try using your eagle when you want a top-down view.
Yeah, I only have 5 follows left, and if I keep up the streaming, I should get it soon enough. Oh boy, the textures. Yeah, good luck with that, Colby. Look at you go! Oh my god, textures. Out of my way! Game please.
Welcome to Evolution of Pottery in Ancient Egypt.
Are you really going, Brendan, or was that
Excavations
just a joke?
all over Egypt
Oh, you're
have
going.
uncovered
Bye,
enormous
Brendan.
quantities of pottery vessels of all shapes
Thank you for
and
coming.
sizes. The production of pottery was mainly confined to the outskirts of settlements due to the materials required and to keep the kiln smoke away from inhabited spaces. The function of the product determined the selection of the raw material, its treatment, its form, as well as the finishing of the surface.
Kitty.
Pottery was essential to ancient Egyptians' daily lives. It was used in all aspects of life, from the storage of grains and liquids to containers within the tombs of necropolises. The most common pottery was made from Nile silt that resulted in a reddish-brown clay. Limestone clay, which made for more attractive pottery, was only found in Upper Egypt. Early pots were made from pinched or coiled clay. Chopped straw, ashes, and other minerals were added, and the mixture was then smoothed and decorated before being put in the oven. Pots were fired in bonfires or enclosed within a brick kiln. Pottery was essential to ancient Egyptians' daily lives. It was used in all aspects of life, from the store. Early pots were made from pinched or coiled clay.
Bye, noob.
Chopped straw, ashes, and other minerals were added, and the mixture was then smoothed and
Sorry for
decorated
doing this all
before
over
being
again.
put in the
I
oven. Pots were fired
was
in
trying to pet the
bonfires or
cats.
enclosed within a brick kiln.
Meow. 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 Meow.
The potter's wheel was utilized during the Old Kingdom. Pottery became smoother and more polished, similar to river stones. It was decorated primarily in red pigment, with the black color achieved by exposing it to smoke. Pottery workshops were attached to palaces or temples, and around the late period, specialized workshops began to appear.
Stop fondling that pot. You spin my head right round, like a record, baby, right round, right round.
Quartzite particles, which created the rich blue or green glazing, became common during the New Kingdom. Mediterranean motifs and tin-based glazing came with the Greco-Roman era.
We need another for that, Mrs. Smith.
Potsherds could be found anywhere, and were the most common canvas for writing or drawing, in comparison to the more expensive papyrus sheets. Named after their Greek description, ostraca contained daily life records, letters, or could be drawn upon. Artists drew sketches for temples and tombs, or simply for leisure.
That's cool. Now, can I... Can. Right, while Bike is doing that, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna end the stream right here. Thanks everyone for watching, and everyone who hosted and everyone who followed. I appreciate all of you equally. I will be back this evening at around 6 PM UK time with some Rise of the Tomb Raider, because it's Tomb Raider Thursday. I'm not sure if anyone else is live right now, so I can't host anyone or raid. I don't know. I think so. Let's check the Twitches. No, no one's live. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Oh, you're right. I could do that. And let's open Twitch in another window. Or is search Assassin's Creed Ori. Let's take English people. Nothing. There doesn't seem to be many English streamers online actually. I see 8. None have many views.
Take your time. I'll wait. It's not like ancient Egypt is going anywhere.
Let's do this one. Should we do a raid or a host? It's that it has a few viewers. I think that's how you do it. Yep. So we are raiding Tonks88. I hope everyone had a good day. And I will see you later on tonight. Or maybe in another stream, I don't know. In chat or whatever. So yeah, I will see you later. Bye!